Ah, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to What's on the Playlist today. Today we're talking about Shake Your Moneymaker by the Black Crowes, and which you will see here. Um, the Black Crowes actually formed in 1984 with two brothers whose names I'm trying to blank on. The band was originally called Mr. Crowe's Garden um, after a children's book. Um, However, in 1989, when they got a record contract, they decided to change their name. After tossing around a few other Crow-related um, names, they settled on the Black Crowes. Excuse me. The album was a smash hit. Um, what is it? Hard to Handle, and I think Twice as Hard. Both, the album reached number 4 on the US on the Billboard charts. Those two songs I mentioned peaked really high. Jealous Again, She Talks to Angels, and one of the songs, name I can't remember. Um, they had 5 songs chart on this album. It's a debut album, and to date, one of their, I think it's still their top selling album, which means they peaked really early. Nothing interesting I could find about the creation of the album. The song "She Talks to Angels" was based on one of the songwriters was a goth girl he knew who was into drugs a lot. The band itself had a lot of inspiration from blues music, classic hard rock, and fellow Georgia bands like REM, which they have stated specifically. The album itself, the title "Shake Your Moneymaker," actually comes from an old Elmore James song. And "Hard to Handle" is actually an old Otis Redding song. It was actually a song the Grateful Dead had in their rotation for several years. They're like big in their live show in several years. Until, and then eventually Black Crowes did a cover version of it, which is really solid. Back to the song "Shake Your Moneymaker" and the blues influence. That song was part of the Blues Crowes live set as well. It's not on this album, but they did cover it during their live shows. Album was a huge critical success. Rolling Stones magazine named Black Crowes the best new band of the year in 1990. A lot of people a lot of critics talked about their energy and their swagger. They compared them to one of the critics said that these guys are the new Rolling Stones, just from, they were loud and they were kind of cocky. And as far as the band itself, they would praise the musicians were really tight. They really knew their stuff and could play well together. And for a band who had already been performing like 4 years already together before they got an album, they had lots of time to get into that. So these guys were really good together. Although I do note that the band's roster has changed quite frequently. The guitarist on this album, whose name I'm drawing a blank on, but I might be able to look it up really quickly. Jeff Cease. This is the only album he performed on. Oh, and the brothers' names are Chris and Rich Robinson, which if I had been brave enough to take my eyes off the camera for a minute when I first started, I could have said that in the beginning. When they toured for this album, here's a little tidbit that I found out when I was looking this stuff up. When they toured for the Shake Your Moneymaker tour in 1990, they were actually touring with ZZ Top, but they were fired from that tour because the tour was sponsored by Miller Lite Beer. And one of the brothers did like a public verbal rant about Miller, and so they were fired from the tour. I did not know that. But for a debut album, for a band to come out with something like right out of the gate with half the songs on the album hitting, actually scoring on the charts, is very, very impressive. I mean, they scored not just on the US charts, but on the UK charts as well. You know, if you're familiar with music history, the blues influences are really, really visible. And I had never, until trying to figure out what to say about this, heard them referenced as the New Rolling Stones. I don't remember that being said when they were first new, because I am old enough to remember when they were a brand new band. I can see that comparison. They really do have that onstage presence of just like coming out and just that aggressive cockiness that the Rolling Stones had when they first came out. They are a fun type band to listen to. From my own personal perspective, the Black Crowes is one of those bands that I'm like, I heard about them, like everyone's raving about how great they were. I'm like, who the hell is this band? Black Crowes? And like, yeah, this is a blues rock band. I'm like, whatever. And, you know, I stopped listening to the radio pretty early on. I've mentioned the size, the size of my music collection, excuse me. And while it's not massive, I acquired most of it before I had children. And my oldest was born when I turned 24. So I acquired over half my music collection, like I said, before I turned 24. And at that point, I'd pretty much stopped listening to radio because I just had enough of my own music to keep me busy. So, you know, when I first heard of this band, it's like, oh, whatever, dude. It's, you know, so, you know, I didn't really pay any attention to it. It took like a year or two. I mean, I saw them on like TV interviews and stuff, and I thought they're kind of amusing. And then the song would play, you know, they would play a song, and like I wasn't really paying attention. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't figure out what all the fuss was about. And then I don't know which song it was, but I believe it was one of the songs on this album. I heard and just thought, man, this song rocks. This is a great song. And that's when I started listening to them and actually paying attention and thinking, okay, I dismissed these guys way too early. Which is an easy thing to do when you only have so many hours in a day, you know, and I was already listening to my own stuff pretty much every waking minute. Not every waking minute, but like, you know, in the car ride to work, in the car ride home from work. If it was possible, I would listen to my own music at work if I could get away with it. But yeah, you know, not being immersed in the music that came out of media, like the radio and television and stuff, I really didn't, this band really didn't resonate with me right off the bat. Unlike the rest of the country, I was behind the times, which is pretty much par for the course for me. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed their music once I paid attention to it. And I'm really glad I started listening to it. So that's my spiel. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.